Yo, what's up guys, Craze here, back at you with another Anthem video, and today I'm going to go over 10 features that I, as well as many others, believe BioWare should be adding in this game. These are some of the stuff that I found to be rather useful for the overall gameplay experience, and after playing Anthem myself and noticing some of the quality of life stuff missing from this game. Also, I want to quickly mention the Anthem giveaway that is still underway, and you can go ahead and check the links down below. But with all of that being said and done, hit that like button if you enjoyed these, and let's get started. So one of the first things I immediately noticed Anthem needing, especially when it comes to free play, is for the ability to set out map markers and have those visibly be indicated on your screen as you move towards them. This would help tremendously not only with your orientation, but also to set out objectives for yourself and for your party members if you happen to be running a group. This should also be the case inside strongholds or other instanced areas, and it would be very useful for groups who prefer creating their own strategies when it comes to engaging with the enemies. Let's say your group, for example, could split in two, so some of the members could deal with ranged enemies like the snipers and the turrets, while the rest of the party members could stay back and clear out the trash mobs. Additionally, marking enemies up with big targets, something like how it's done for example in World of Warcraft, could also help tremendously in random matchmaking groups, where most of the time I see players aimlessly attacking everything in sight. This way you don't need to rely on voice chat, and you can simply put out a target and then direct some of the party members to go towards that objective. At number 2, while at first I didn't see this being a necessity, as time went by I realized that changing shoulder orientation or shoulder perspective could be an amazing feature. Many times when I was low on health and wanted to avoid damage but still take down the enemies, I was forced to go and break line of sight, go behind cover and stick behind corners. Many times this might make you have to deal with some awkward angles, where changing the shoulder view from left to right and vice versa could come in very handy. I would also argue that this adds a nice level of complexity to the combat, making it a little bit more diversified, and this could definitely be a small feature with a huge impact. I've also seen a lot of people asking for this, which makes me believe that this would be more important than we might think. At number 3, it probably happens to many of you to get hit by some big attacks and be put in a down state. Since the game does not have a self-respawn mechanic, you're kind of forced to look at your screen with this huge red icon in the middle while helplessly waiting for another party member to notice you and come in and resurrect you. While in the down state, the game should give us the possibility to change the camera from our character to that of the party members. Just change perspective to one of your party members so you can better assess the situation, see what happens in the background, and how to better adapt when you're out of the down state and become resurrected. So that would be very useful, and this would also make things a little bit more interesting, because I oftentimes found myself just alt tabbing because I didn't have anything to do while people weren't resurrecting me. At number 4, and this is a huge one for me, is for the end stronghold bosses to drop loot chests and give us a longer time period after defeating it. The way it's currently done really breaks immersion and ruins the fun and intrigue of defeating a huge boss and grabbing its loot. Case in point, the end boss in the demo stronghold would not drop a chest at all, and immediately after defeating it, you as well as your entire party would be loaded in the expedition menu, where the boss drops would be randomized with what you already got from the previous encounters. You don't even know what you get from the boss itself, since the loot isn't even revealed until the end screen. You don't even see that appearing on the side, by the way. So instead, what BioWare could do here to immensely increase player satisfaction is for the big end bosses to drop loot chests like how other events do, and also give us a time period to grab them up and also stay for a little bit longer to have a chat. While it might not look like an important detail to you, it does add a lot to the overall impression of these encounters and to the player satisfaction. To give you the same example with World of Warcraft, I think Blizzard always nailed it with how they handle the bosses and loot in general. You get to defeat these huge encounters, see the contents of the loot drops, and then have a quick chat with your raid members before going back to the city. I would like to see something like this in Anthem as well. Speaking of encounters, at number 5, since the main point of Anthem is to fight huge groups of enemies, I was surprised how fast their corpses tend to despawn on, disappearing almost immediately after defeating them. Personally, after a huge fight, I really enjoy seeing the results of my actions, and I believe there's many more of you out there who are of the same opinion and have these corpses linger for a little bit longer. Now, I know this would be complicated from performance reasons, but it could be set up like making these bodies despawn after, let's say, 30 seconds to a minute at maximum, so at the very least you can see some of the things that you have done. I don't know, it's just something that might seem minor at first, but it does add a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction after you've doing so. At number 6, let's talk a little bit more about weapons and how they feel. I believe I'm not the only one who thinks this, but sometimes a lot of the weapons in Anthem seem to not have any impact to them at all, even though they do immense damage and like some of them even do these huge explosions. From my limited testing, I found this to be a combination between the gunfire sound effects being not that great combined with the lack of enemy reaction and physics to getting shot, and this was also my suggestion to making weapons feel having a little bit more impact. Make the sound effects have a little bit more bass to them, also make enemies' reactions being physics based, like being pushed backwards from the big shotgun rounds for example, and also make your character being pushed back a little bit when shooting a big gun. I think just these 3 additions would make the combat feel more impacty, if that makes any sense. Now, since I've previously talked about the loot, if there's one quality of life improvement I'd want to see in this department is for mass salvaging to be a feature. As you go on expeditions, grab a ton of stuff, you'll always find useless stuff that just sits in your inventory and doesn't do anything, and more often than not you're going to be salvaging this for parts so you can use it in crafting. That in itself can become a quite time-consuming ordeal, and you'll have to go through several types of items like weapons, components, gear slots and so on, as well as dozens of items in each of these categories to salvage one by one, and that can take quite a lot of time. A good feature here would be to just give us the ability to mark multiple items to be salvaged, or at the very least make us filter by certain rarities, certain names or keywords, and then salvage everything that fits that criteria. This is something that I really want to see, and I'm seeing a lot more people being of the same opinion. Since we're still on the subject of items, at number 8, one thing that really bugs me is why BioWare decided to make the text on the items, especially the inscription section, horizontal instead of vertical. Oftentimes we have 2 of the inscription bonuses per row, and with the limited horizontal space, this oftentimes causes the text to cut off and be scrolled with this really annoying effect that takes a lot of time to read, especially when it comes to longer texts. A better alternative here is to simply add all of the inscriptions vertically, 1 per row, much like how it is in like almost any other MMO out there, including World of Warcraft, and there's arguably a lot of unused space beneath most of these UI elements, so might as well just make use of all of this extra UI space that doesn't get used anyway, and it will also save players a lot of trouble waiting for the longer text to scroll just so you can see what bonuses the item gives. At number 9, as we're still in the Forge menu, I'd love to see a full list of all of my character stats. Stuff like total HP, shield strength, maximum damage for each type of attack, including weapons and gear slots, and even the flight duration, as that is definitely influenced by some of the pilot skills as you level up, unless of course BioWare changed that since they previously talked about it. Again, I'm bringing up the unused UI sections that could easily squeeze all of this information in, maybe even make it so that when you hover over the item level you can see all of these stats, or maybe make it possible to switch between the item rarities under the item level to the stats and vice versa. This way you would have a better understanding of how powerful or weak your character is, as well as giving you a better idea of how you should progress in terms of gearing up. Finally, at number 10, I want to talk a little bit more about the flight controls and how BioWare could make them better and more responsive for the keyboard and mouse controls. To give you a general idea, the way the controls are with the mouse right now is something called being tethered. Imagine having a string attached to your mouse cursor, and instead of the mouse directly pulling the camera up, down, left or right, it pulls a string which pulls the camera, which then makes your character move towards it. This is a good way of giving you the impression of the flight having weight to it and having like physics and all of that, but it also brings this annoying delay between your actions and what you're seeing on your screen, and it also makes it feel a little bit more unresponsive. It's like trying to drift while in the air, if that makes any sense. This is all fine for controllers and on the consoles, since this is how roughly the thumbsticks work, but for the PC this can be quite frustrating. A very good way to deal with this would be similar to how No Man's Sky does it, and in No Man's Sky, flight controls have two types of settings. There's the tethered controls, which I've just explained, and then we also have the locked controls, which are more typical to PC gaming. The locked controls are the ones that are aching towards the keyboard and mouse setup, and that's what I would also love to see in Anthem. At the very least, give us this additional setting, as some of the players might prefer the one over the other. Instead of dragging your cursor on the screen and having the camera follow after, make it so that the mouse locks on the camera itself and then it follows the exact path where your cursor is going on the screen. It's really hard to explain if you're not testing this for yourself, but it's how basically most PC games that deal with flying do it anyway. And that's pretty much all I have for today. Tell me what other similar quality of life features you would like to see being added in Anthem, post your comments down below, and also don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys later, so peace.